A thread by Carlos Osuita. Trump, you magnificent bastard, I read your book! Link in the thread to the Rommel magnificent bastard line in Patton. Carlos continues. Erwin Rommel's book was Infantry Attacks. He was a lieutenant in World War I, serving in the 124th Württemberg Infantry Regiment. Independently of the people credited with small unit tactics, Rommel developed them on his own. His were actually superior to the famous names. In the Battle of Caporetto, October 24th, 1917 to November 19th, 1917, Rommel and 150 men captured 9,000 Italians in 3 days, losing 6 dead and 30 wounded. Rommel ignored his orders, infiltrated enemy lines, and attacked from behind. He trained some men to speak Italian. They crept behind the enemy and shouted, "Oh Lord, the front lines have collapsed. Over 100,000 soldiers are coming. Our only hope is to surrender." Rommel also trained his men in the art of grenade throwing, including dummy grenades that made the enemy run. After his first victory, Rommel again ignored orders and attacked over 10,000 Italians with his 150 men. They all surrendered. Rommel was awarded the Blue Max, the German Empire's highest award. Here's a good shot of it. In World War II, he was known as the Desert Fox for his fighting in North Africa. He was also assigned to the defense of France against Allied invasion. We fooled him into thinking the invasion would take place at Pas-de-Calais instead of Normandy. After it was clear that Germany had lost the war, Rommel, who was apolitical, gave his blessings to the plot to assassinate Hitler, which suffered a failure cascade. If the chosen meeting had taken place in the usual room and von Stauffenberg had been able to activate both bombs in his briefcase, Hitler would have been killed. But he survived, and Rommel was forced to commit suicide by swallowing cyanide. But Trump is using Rommel's World War I deceptions. From Breitbart, New York Times' Friedman, I'm terrified to find myself covering America's second who gives a crap. Carlos continues, Democrats and leftists are hysterical all the time. That makes them easy to fool, like the 19,000 Italians who surrendered to Rommel and his 150 men in World War I. Rommel barely had to fire a shot. He simply had his men speak in Italian. Trump has the Democrats losing their marbles over words. And this second Civil War nonsense is laughable. All the troops are pre-positioned. They've been surveilling and gathering intelligence for months. The Democrats' greatest blunder? Convincing the voters that in-person voting is death. Now the Democrats are begging them to vote in person. Can't turn that ocean liner around before the election. Trump wins on election night, guaranteed. One last point. Do some friggin' research. Washington is 100% mail-in voting. Nope. Quote, each county opens a voting center prior to each primary, special election, and general election. Each voting center is open during business hours during the voting period, which begins 18 days before and ends at 8 p.m. on the day of the primary, special election, or general election. You can locate your nearest voting center by logging into votewashington.gov or contacting your county's elections department, sos.wa.gov. Frequently asked questions on voting by mail. Washington State Secretary of State, baby. If you aren't informed, there's no excuse. Got that? You're a flop. Don't be a flop. Be a magnificent bastard.
I will be the greatest president that God ever created.